like to meet you. Like to meet you. Again. Yeah, please don't forget to click the subscription button and turn on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever you like. And also, please don't forget to click the like button, like and share, like and share. All right, so today's newspaper review. Let's see what we have on the Nation newspaper. It says a retirement directive unsettles adamant police officers. Then impeachment. Pex court rejects Ondo Assembly's fast track request, and you can read that up on page 27. Then we see out here say we are committed to transparency, says Lagos Procurement Agency. And rumble in federal civil service over PEB sex promotion exam. That's on page 6. Africans should dump Western democracy, says Obasanjo. You can read that up on page 29. Then Tinubu to Siemens, speed up investment in power, will, and President Wu's Germany with safety of funds, economic reforms, educated workforce, and others. Then subsidy removal takes monthly federation account inflow to 1 trillion naira. And presidency tackles Atiku over claim on court verdict. Then also assembly, CJ battle over misconduct allegation and protesters at court. That's on page 27. Please don't forget to click the subscription button and turn on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever we're live. So let's see on the subsidy removal takes monthly federation account inflow to 1 trillion naira. Says monthly revenue inflow into the Federation Account Allocation Committee, that's the FAAC, fund has risen from 650 billion naira to 1 trillion naira monthly since the withdrawal of subsidy on petrol. And Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of Economy, Wale Edu, has said then subsidy on petrol was declared gone by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his inauguration speech on May 29. And according to Edu, the subsidy regime eroded much needed revenue and spoke in Asaba, the Delta State capital, at the opening of a 4-day retreat organized for FAAC members. And the ministers represented by the permanent secretary, Mr. Okunkwo Udom, said the government realized that petrol subsidy was not sustainable. So that's what we have on that note. And also on the aspect of the presidency tackling article over claims on court verdict. It says the president yesterday rejected the allegation of by the People Democratic Party, PDP, and its former presidential candidate Ahaji Atiku Abubakar that President Bola Tinubu was muzzling the opposition and forcing a one-party state on Nigeria. It accused PDP and Atiku of raising a false alarm and embarking on a campaign of calumny following their defeat at the last general election. According to the presidency, these allegations are deliberately aimed at unnecessarily eating up the polity and causing public disenchantment, adding that they exist only in the imagination of the PDP and the former vice president. It emphasized that President Tinubu is also not planning to impose a one-party state, as Atiku has serially alleged, and his party and spokesman have now parroted. Atiku, in a statement by his media advisor Paul Ibe, accused the president of assaulting the ballot box and the judicial process by influencing judges and imposed 2023 poll litigations. An article alleged that the president, Tinubu, cannot tolerate opposition, stressing that he adopted the same style when he was governor of Lagos State. He also said the ruling All Progressive Congress (APC) abhors an inglorious ideology of snatch, grab, and run away with power, adding that it has also turned the judiciary into a catch and carry arm of government. But objecting to the allegations, which it's described as malicious, the presidency said Atiku and PDP were visiting their frustration on President Tinubu and the ruling party following their defeat at the poll. A statement by the special advisor to President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, titled PDP Atiku Raising False Alarm, said in separate statements the People's Democratic Party and the spokesman of Atiku Abubakar, its defeated presidential candidate, threw caution to the winds as they assaulted the integrity of the judiciary and made wide and libelous allegations against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In the wake of the poor run of some elected governors of the party at the appeal court, the PDP and former vice president and his spokesman have become overly depressed and desperate to hang their woes on President Tinubu and the judiciary, an important arm of government in Nigeria. In blaming others, Atiku and his party have failed to demonstrate whether they have done any soul searching before going public with their weighty, specious, and reckless and irresponsible allegations. While we do not hold brief for the judiciary, we urge Nigerians to discontent and the malicious allegations by the PDP and its candidate that President Tinubu has governor of Lagos silenced the opposition and corrupted the judiciary, and that he is planning to force a one-party state on the country by appointing loyalists as resident electoral commissioners. That's the Rex. And President Tinubu is a Democrat to the core. We make bold to say that as president, he has not interfered with the judgment of the judiciary. And we had witnessed how, under his watch, the PDP governor in Osun defeated the APC at the Supreme Court. Similarly, the PDP governor in Bauchi also won his case in the appeal court, beating the APC, and President Tinubu is also not planning to impose a one-party state as Atiku, as Cyril alleged, and his party and spokesman have now parroted. He said, in contrast, it is on record that Atiku Abubakar recently confessed about the electoral est his party executed in the Southwest in 2003, which Tinubu survived out of the 6 governors of the different Alliance for Democracy. And he says, why Atiku and PDP are now crying wolf over the appeal court rulings on governorship polls in Plateau, Zamfara, and Nasarawa states. Said we extend to ask the former vice president where he was in 2019 when the court ruled against All Progressive Congress in Zamfara state. The court then awarded all the positions won by the APC to PDP. And where was Atiku also in 2019 when in Rivers State the court stopped APC from feeding any candidates in both the governorship and House of Assembly elections. So these are questions arising to addressing Mr. Abubakar over his claims. So they need a response. So say, where was Atiku and the PDP in 2019 when on the eve of the swearing-in of Bayelsa governor-elect David Leon, the Supreme Court handed the victory of the APC to the candidate of the PDP, and Governor Diri, who was earlier rejected at the poll by the people of Bayelsa. And Atiku and the PDP then savored all these court-handed trophies as sweet victories for PDP and celebrated the court as protectors of democracy. And now the same court are annulling PDP victories based on the blatant violations of the law by the lawless party. And said the party is mudslanging the judiciary and President Tinubu. So that is it. It says Tinubu's agenda inimical to democracy, says Atiku. Says it is irresponsible and a disservice to our country for the opposition, after failing to observe the letters and spirit of the law, to now turn around to tear down an important arm of our government. So now this is from these are all articles allegations, and articles maintained that President Tinubu harbored an agenda for grabbing power, influence the judiciary, and muzzling the opposition. It said either through the electoral process, where opposition's parties are rigged out with browsing impunity, or during the post-election court process, where the judiciary is conspicuously doing the biddings of the ruling All Progressive Congress, as the APC. So it has become increasingly apparent that the democracy in Nigeria is in a state of ill health. So trying to say that the democracy in Nigeria actually is in need of a doctor. Yeah. So said sadly and suddenly, we have seen a trend whereby the range of opposition engagement continues to be narrowed by the ruling party in Nigeria. So the statement by the former vice president raised the idea notion of democracy does not just reside in a representative government, but essentially rooted in the plurality of ideas, and thus for a system to be seen as truly democratic, it must necessarily accommodate opposition and opposing views. So all these are clearly signs that threatens not just our faith in the electoral and judicial system, and envisaging that our democracy is compromised. So these are both claims from the article and then the response from the president. So there's one here says that everyone, including judges, was forced to join his party, and the few opposition members who managed to get elected were beaten to submission, including at the Lagos State House of Assembly, where the sole PDP member back in 2018 was suspended and arrested for gun running, but mysteriously had the charges dropped immediately after they defected to the APC. So these are just normal fights. So it's something that, as we all know, something that has been happening right from time. So now the sitting president is trying to let them know that these are things they've done, and to them, to the city president, what it's trying to say is that it's trying to make everything straight, everything okay. So it's trying to bring the according to the spokesman, he wants to bring back democracy. So when things start coming up, you is definitely you hear different things. Yeah, of course. When you want to bring down someone, your part will definitely come out, and that's what is going on here. All right, so let's just move over to the next newspaper. Please, if you have any comment, any contribution, you can join us via the link in the comment section. Right, so on the Blueprint newspaper, we have the Western democracy not working in Africa. This is coming from Obasanjo, and that's on page 6. Then we have WCD says 17.6 million children will be born into hunger this year. This coming from I think it's one of the science survey. So and that's on page 13. If you want to see more, you can flip over to page 13 of the Blueprint newspaper. Then Seplet to conclude $1.3 billion ExxonMobil asset buy in federal government was in, and that's on page 22. Then on page 7 of the Blueprint newspaper, we have the Sulevers Obumgadu and security brief of in Nasarawa ahead Apex Court judgment, and that's on page 7. Then on the major headline of the Blueprint newspaper says, still on the forest subsidy removal that Nigeria records over 1 trillion naira monthly revenue inflow. So that's to say there's progress, but the next thing is what will happen thereafter. So it says recovering efforts will bounce economy back to stability. So we anticipate. So PMS, it says the NUPENG denies planned protest, warns against panic buying, and that's on page 6. And also does page 15. Then we see on page 7 say that the cleric set to smash Guinness World Record with 60-hour marathon sermon. Which of the sermon? All right. So on page 23 says the currency in circulation 82.99 trillion naira. Then the initial to drive Nigeria economy. Nigeria's energy transition with $500 million, and that's on page 22. Initial to drive Nigeria's energy transition with $500 million. In our human material resources advantage over others, Tinubu tells investors, and that's on page 6. Says African countries have larger energy and potentials than Germany. Is coming from the Chancellor. So the Daily Sun newspaper says climate change, over 110 million Nigerian children at risk. This coming from UNICEF. It says 650,000 Nigerians displaced by flood in 4 years, and that's on page 27 of the Daily Sun newspaper. And then on the major headline says the APC opposition parties on war path over court judgments. Ruling party plotting to turn Nigeria into one party state, NNPP, and you're wrong. This coming from APC. APC snatched, grab, run agenda inimical to democracy. This coming from Atiku. You are raising false alarm. This from the presidency. So these are the claims that of which I've read. That the article is laying an allegation on Tinubu that he wants to make the country a one-party state, but from the APC they say that's not true. So let's watch how it plays out. So Ohanaeze announces plans to amend constitution, calls for memorandum, and that's on page 28. In manpower, our greatest asset, Tinubu tells investors, give assurance of free inflow, outflow of funds. That's on page 6. Editors urge federal government to give economic revival measures human face, and says media sustainability crucial to democracy and economic growth. That's on page 27. Then the DHQ reveals how troops foiled attack on Yombe governor's convoy. And bandits kill policeman adopt Zamfara monarch's wife, and that 14 others. That's on page 4. And US Israeli official raise hope on deal to free hostages, achieve ceasefire, and that's on page 28. Still on the subsidy removal, as the other newspaper have stated, that federal government records over 1 trillion naira monthly revenue inflow, and that's from the minister. Says prior to now it's 650 billion, but now it is 1 trillion naira, and that's to say that they were making progress, but let's see the plans on how they will utilize the money, because it's not all about making progress and getting enough inflow, but also investing or utilizing it wisely. Okay, it says the 5 tier 1 banks interest income is 3.28 trillion in 9 months, and that's on page 2 and page 26. And reps tax government on safety of schools premises to ensure enforcement of the PWD Act, and you can read that on page 26 of the Daily Sun newspaper. And also, let's see what we have here. And this day newspaper says that in Berlin, Tinubu pushes for investment in Nigerians' power, rail transport sectors, and tells investors highly skilled Nigerians are country's greatest assets. And federal government says from the federal government, the federation accounts received average 1 trillion naira monthly inflow since subsidy removal, and that's on page 6. So if it's monthly, then we should be having more than 1 trillion naira in our account, in the federation account, since May, right here, since May. So we see June, July, August, September, October, November. This is November, so we should be having 6 trillion naira in the account. ATM Shinedu, good morning to you. You're welcome. All right, so on the major headline, yes, says Buhari, I did my best, not sure if expected results were achieved. So that is from Buhari. Is trying to say that he tried his best, he did all in his part to ensure that he gives us the best in his ability, but he is not sure if he actually met our expected result, if it met our expectations. That's what it's trying to say. So he's not sure if our expectations were met. Okay, admits his administration must have been hijacked, and explains why Naira redesign policy was introduced. If you are so keen on this, if you really want to know more about this, when you grab your this day newspaper, flip to page 10 and see story. Yeah, story continues on page 10 of this day newspaper. All right, so we have from the Fulani. It says it's dangerous for judiciary to censure 165,000 voters for electoral officers. And also there's a mistake. It said it's dangerous for judiciary to sanction 165 voters for electoral officers' mistakes. And 6 reviews of judgment sacking 3 opposition governors. Then we have the PDP hacks CGN to probe ruling parties and claim of controlling judiciary. Then from Atiku says the APC snatch grab and run agenda inimical to democracy. And federal government lambasts opposition party Atiku for casting aspersion on judiciary, and that's on page 10 of this day newspaper. Then the photo there displays the meeting on human capital development progress. So the human capital development program, we have Mr. Tony Eluminu, then we have President Dangote, the group of companies. And then we have Chetima, the vice president, and we have the minister of health. We have the chief of staff in office of the vice president. We have Senator Ibrahim. We have the World Bank representative in Nigeria. So these are the photos there during the meeting of Human Capital Development Program aired at the Presidential Villa, Abuja yesterday. Says Obasanjo, Western style democracy not working in Africa. That's on page 10 of this day newspaper. So on the Daily Trust newspaper, please, if you're new to this channel, don't forget to click the subscription button, turn on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever we're live, and please send us a super chat and also send us a token. Then if you have any comment, the link is in the comment section. You can join us via the link to air your view. All right, so the Daily Independent newspaper, we have still on the economy, says editors confirm urges federal government to reduce defending anxiety among Nigerians, and that's on page 7. You can read that up to see more details. Then on lottery regulation feud, it says 15 years after Supreme Court as Lagos Ekiti suit against federal government, 34 states, March 13. You can read that up on page 7. Then on the major headline says the telecoms bemoan profits dip amid volatile economy and lose over 5 million subscribers in 8 months. Trend story continues on page 29. The Western democracy not working for Africa, that's coming from Obasanjo, and you can read that up on page 29 if you want to know why it's not working for Nigeria or for Africa. You can read that up on page 29 of the Daily Independent newspaper. Stashing opposition's mandates inimical to democracy. Yeah, of course, I've gone through this story, but you can still see that on page 29 of the Daily Independent newspaper. In broader queries, DSS refusal to allow family visit Nnamdi Kanu and raises fresh concern over his health. That's on page 6. Why should they refuse the family for visiting? Like, I really don't get that. Hope these people know what they are doing. They should better be careful so as not to cause chaos in the country, because this alone is raising a lot of agitations. All right, say please refute assassination attempt on Rivers factional speaker, and that's on page 7. The police refute assassination attempt on Rivers factional speaker. And crisis rocks aviation union election as aggrieved parties threaten court action, and that's on page 6. And federal government records over 1 trillion monthly as 1 trillion naira monthly revenue from subsidy removal. The Apex Court upholds Benue governor election, and that's on page 26. And MPC postponements blessing in disguise. That's coming from an analyst on page 26. So this morning they've gathered this 6 trillion naira from my own. It's my speculation. So it is not what I've been said, but just my speculation. From this day newspaper said the 1 trillion naira is monthly. They've been recording a minimum of 1 trillion naira monthly. So I did my own speculation that we should be getting up to 6 or let's say 5 trillion naira by now. So I believe that's 5 trillion naira is enough to invest in something in this country. That is one of these sectors. The crude, if that would be the first priority, it would have been enough to at least invest in that and see how we can grow. All right, so the Guardian newspaper says the government considers new MPC members as uncertainty rocks economy. You can read that up on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Then we have the food inflation as on 31.5%. The inflation rate 27.33%, and the exchange rates we have 1.113 naira per dollar. And then the interest rate we have 18.75%. Then on page 5, we have the Nigeria loses 1.4 trillion naira yearly to contracts scams, institute affirms. And federal government earns 1 trillion naira monthly from subsidy removal, says minister. And that's on page 29. $100 trillion of global GDP may be lost to antimicrobial resistance by 2050. You can read that up on page 3 if you want to know how. And the protesters storm PDP secretariat, demand resignation of NWC members, and that's on page 3. And then we have 65-year-old landlord bags life imprisonment for sexual assault. And beyond the euphoria of the P&ID court case verdict, you can read that on the editorial page 12. And why democracy is not working for Africa by Obasanjo. You can read that up on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Meanwhile, please, if you're yet to click the subscription button, please do not hesitate to do that. Please click on the subscription button. Thank you. Then don't forget to click turn on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever we're live. Then on the Vanguard newspaper, we have it says the bank income tax raises to 132% to 311 billion naira in 9 months, and that's on page 19. Then we have APC snatch, grab, and run agenda inimical to democracy, and that's coming from Atiku. Then we have the economy recovering. Edictors COFAB urges federal government to reduce defending anxiety among the Nigerians. That's on page 8. One of the anxiety includes the rate of which the gas price is skyrocketing. All right, we have still from Tinubu to Germany investors says Nigerian as ingredients to become modern economy. And on his in financial markets as CBN's MPC meetings fails to hold. That's on page 5. It can aggravate economic uncertainty, and that's coming from Muda Yusuf. Better a new dates rather than leave it hanging. This coming from the commercial partners, and it would keep investors guessing. This coming from Akiloye. The markets will assume policy directions of the MPC. This coming from Shiazo, and said MPC has not been officially constituted. That's from Ola today. It will heighten speculations, uncertainty of economy. This coming from Oni, and not good for the economy. So these are different mindsets or views on this case. And this is said is not good for the economy is coming from the coffee, and it was in Nigerians microeconomic rules, and that's from social justice group. All this can be seen on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Then the compacts with African Economic Summit, you can see them on the photo there, Mr. President and the rest. Then we said the democracy has failed in Africa. That's from bottom. You can read it up on page 10 of this Vanguard newspaper. So with whichever paper you're able to lay your hands on, you will see this there. So it says still on the subsidy removal, federal government records over one. So it said over 1 trillion naira monthly revenue. So my speculation is 5 trillion, but it might be over, it might be more than that. Okay, so on sport news, that's on page 31, why we are stuck with Pesiro and FF member confesses. It's time for political reforms that's coming from Labour Party. And 4 days after Appeals Court yes to release CTC of Kanu judgment, that's that's coming from the NNPP, and it's on page 13. It's almost close to the date given for Mr. Nnamdi Kanu's judgment. So let's look forward to hear good news. Let's look forward to hearing good news from them. Okay, so we have on that note, we have that's Tinubu's G20 investors FAAC meet over multiple transaction, and that is on the Punch newspaper. So I'll go through it. It says the President Bola Tinubu has assured international investors from G20 nations that their money is safe within the borders of the country. And the president disclosed this during a panel discussion titled Fostering Local Value Chains and Investment in Africa. And the role of the Jama private sector at the G20 Compact with Africa Economic Conference hosted by German Chancellor and Ola Screws in Berlin on Monday. He alerted to the investors that Nigeria has a large market and is ready to leverage all its advantages to become successful. While the president is trying to woo investors in Germany, the Federation Account Allocation Committee is merely plans to take decisive actions against multiple transactions in the country. And the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, states this at the opening of the FAAC's retreat on Monday in Delta. He announced that the government is not set to overburden payers with many new taxes, but will rather burden its tax base while simplifying and streamlining tax administration in the country. He said in Germany on Monday, Tinubu said, "Your money is safe. We are eager and ready to partner with you. We have the youngest, largest, and most vibrant youth population in Africa equally, and we have a well-educated population, a massive market, and the political will to bring it all together under my leadership." The special advisor to the president on media and publicity, a jury, in the rule of law in crucial for attracting foreign investment. Nigerians' energetic youth population and well-educated populace represent the most significant incentive for investors towards the maturing beneficial replication of China's economic resurgence. And we are eager and ready to partner with you. We have the youngest, largest, and most vibrant youth population in Africa. It says equally, we have every ingredient required in making a modern economy. So this is the words of Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It says the we have we have every ingredient required in making a modern economy. So a well educated population, a massive market, and the political will to bring it all together under my leadership. It continued, said Tinubu stressed that African now fully recognizes the relationship between the inflow of investor money and the sanctity of contracts. He said the president I say his president further assured potential investors and Nigeria has moved beyond restrictive policies and today capital can be moved in and out of the country freely and providing flexibility for investors. He said it's also elected the social political stability in the country, saying Nigeria has consolidated its democracy with several consecutive handovers of power. He also says that there is stability and predictability in the social political development of our country, which provides a conducive atmosphere for business operations and investments. He affirms that the federal government is also dogged in pursuit of natural gas development, and he further disclosed that the country is set to implement tax reforms. He said the world knows Nigeria as a leader in the energy sector, and our vast gas deposits and business friendly environment makes us an attractive investment destination. He also says that but we are going a step further now. We are creating fiscal responsibility and tax reforms as we reforms our financial institutions and accommodate foreign investment expenditures. And he also says, meanwhile, in data on Monday, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edu, who was represented by the ministry's permanent secretary, Mr. Okunko Udu, he said he declared that the government is not set to overburden payers. So they're not set to overburden the taxpayers with many new taxes because honestly, there are a lot of taxes. There are so many taxes, even to those who are working and the non-working class. They all have tax to pay. So he said, but we would rather broaden its tax base while simplifying and streamlining tax administration in the country. He said, Edu, who elected the government's target of a tax to GDP ratio of 18% by 2026, said, we all know that achieving tax revenue to GDP target of 22% and tax to GDP of 18% by 2026 are part of the cardinal objective of this administration. It says, however, in doing that, we appreciate the need not to overburden the taxpayers by introducing so many taxes. What is necessary to be done is to broaden the tax base and simplify a streamline. So, it's still repeating that simplify the streamlined tax administration for ease of collection. That is why among the parallel activities of this government after coming to office was the constitution of a presidential committee on fiscal policy and tax reforms, and the committee has already submitted an interim report full of optimism. So let's keep trusting to see the best. Okay, says the federal government is poised to restore government revenue and promote fiscal balance and prudent management of government expenditure. And multiple taxes have been a bane to Nigeria businesses. And recently, telecommunication operators lamented that they are now faced with 52 different taxes. No wonder their prices have gone up. Um, Data of like 500 is now like 600, like just so and so and so. Everything is now expensive. I was not surprised because it was expected. They also will need to ensure that our business is still running. All right, so the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Mr. Tao Oyedele, noted that the panel has suggested the measure of over 200 tax being paid by Nigerian businesses into 10. And he said that we have over 60 taxes and levies officially collectible by federal, states, and local governments. Unofficially, those taxes are over 200, making life difficult for our people. So the taxes at all levels of government combined, we think, should be less than 10. Please, in this less than 10, it shouldn't be the same price with the 200, because there's a way you can reduce something and still those other things, those other stuff that you're paying for will still be included in that minimal um rate you get, in that minimal numbers. So just hope as it's, or if it wants to be reduced, it should be more expensive. It should be less than what they pay, because you can't reduce it to 10 and then maybe one of each might be like 5,000, of which the 200 we have like 30, 15 naira, 100 naira, and in total everything would have been that amount. All right, so backing the minister's claim to expand reduce multiple transaction, and the governor of Delta State, Sheriff Oboivori, who was represented by his deputy, Mr. Monday Oyima, affirmed that taxes are the dividend of a thriving private sector. It said tax is the dividend of a thriving private sector. For us to reap the benefits, we need to, as a matter of exigency, remove the institutional bottleneck that make the cost of doing business in Nigeria unbearably high. It's very important. It said it is only after we have done this that we can realistically expect to widen the tax base and diversify the economy, and yeah, and so on and so forth. So you can just read that up and continue the story. You can continue the story on page 19 of the Punch newspaper. The storyline long. All right, so it's Obaseki Deputy John's governor raise and plans campaign, and that's on page 7. Then any suspense World Bank's arbitration on OPL 245 disputes, and that's on page 20. Then the presidency from some tackles Obasanjo over democracy comments, and that's on page 7. Then the major headline says reps pub 447 billion naira in COVID-19 spending. COVID-19 spendings and summer 83 MDAs, and that's on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Lawmakers allege mismanagement of funds from 2020 to 2022 and demand accountability. The panel plans 6-day grilling of MDA's chief accounts and finance and procurement officers. The Osun CJ called workers protest assembly listings, and there is BRT users lament shortage of buses, and then there's a long queue in Lagos State, and that's on page 4 and page 5. Then on the Israel Hamas, women, children carry war burden, and family await hostages, and that's on page 3 of the Punch newspaper. Alright, so on the Nigeria Tribune newspaper, we have the economic recovering edictors confirm want federal government to reduce defending anxiety among Nigerians. Then on the major headline, we have the Western liberal democracy not working in Africa, and that's coming from the Mr. Obasanjo. That's on page 14. So if you want to really know more about that, you can just flip to page 14 of the Nigeria Tribune newspaper and see. So we have the CBN postpones NPC meetings again, and that's on page 7. Then on page 15, we have the APC set to take over Plateau Assembly from PDP. Then on page 7, we have appeal court affirms Alliance as being with government. Then Supreme Court to hear Lagos Ekiti suit against federal government, 34 other states over lottery control, March 13. And that's on page 28. Obaseki to lead data Ondo Ekiti to repurchase shares, reorganize BEDC to solve electricity crisis, and that's on page 4. The 110 million children in Nigeria at risk, more vulnerable to climate change. This coming from the UNICEF, and that's on page 8 of the Nigeria Tribune newspaper. As we all know, the federal government records over 1 trillion naira monthly revenue inflow, and they will. So let's see what's the Daily Times. It says bandits. That's major headline. It says bandits besieged 2 Kaduna local alleged, and that's on page 2. It's a lie doing our best. This coming from police. And farmers produce our targets residents claim. It said give graphic details of attacks. My brother was killed near residence. This coming from the ex-deputy speaker. So the ex-deputy speaker says his brother was killed in the near residence. And defense minister confident that federal government will overcome terrorism. And Rivers Assembly Speaker says CP trade wars over alleged assassination bid. And heavy security as Plateau APC celebrates a court victory. Petition against Alia and dismissed. That's on page 4. Then we have Osun Judiciary, Workers Grill Chief Judge, and Nigerian Navy ship rescues drifting Cameroonian vessel, and that's on page 4. And Reps Faleke queries lottery trust fund boss, and it's like government opened in agency for you and your family, and that's on page 5. So that's all on the newspaper today. The Daily Trust newspaper says Sawolu under fire over 118 million naira vegetables, Tinubu's portraits. And then we have 110 million Nigerian children at risk of climate change, and that's coming from the UNICEF. And also we have why Nigeria withdrew MNJTF troops from border with Nigeria. Then we have reps go after 83 MDAs over 184 billion naira COVID-19 fund mismanagement. So meaning that the 184 billion naira COVID-19 fund was mismanaged. Furore over vacancies appointment of federal PEMSEX, and that's on page 2. Employer to remove the me targeted at Kwankwa's sole vision. That this coming from Kanu governor. And it's still recorded here out that the federal government records over 1 trillion naira monthly revenue inflow. And although it's a good news, but what would be more beneficial to us is if it is well managed. All right, so from to the end of today's newspaper review. Hope you please do have an amazing day, and be at rest. Always remember that some things will fall in places. All right, so do have an amazing day. See you same time, same station tomorrow. While we leave, I'll play this update on Simon Ekpa.
A loss to any Biafra family is a loss to all. An injury to any one single Biafra is an injury to all. From the 4th to the 6th of December, every person in Anambra State wearing military uniform, any place you see them, they are the killers of our people. Bring them down. It is eye for an eye, gun for gun, machete for machete, blood for blood, until we exit Nigeria. Because there is no law in Nigeria. There are Islamic movement. All they do is to come, kill, and put fear on our people using terrorism and allow them to go to the IDP camp so they can overrun our land. It is not going to be possible anymore. And I want to see any government in the world who will sit back and watch their own citizens, innocent children, being killed and butchered, being rained with the bullet of AK-47, and that government will fold its hand. The Biafra Republic government in exile, the de facto government, has become the legitimate, only legitimate government that will fight and will protect Biafrans going forward.